The music industry has never been short on controversy, but when it comes to BTS and their legendary fan base, ARMY, even some of the biggest rappers in the world have learned a hard lesson the hard way. Over the years, several artists made comments, jokes, or subtle jabs aimed at BTS, sometimes to gain attention, sometimes out of skepticism, and sometimes simply because they underestimated what BTS had built. What happened next often shocked everyone watching. How could a single fan base turn a casual remark into a worldwide headline within hours? Why do so many celebrities end up apologizing, clarifying, or completely changing their tone after mentioning BTS? And which famous rappers discovered that challenging one of the most passionate fandoms on earth could create consequences far bigger than they ever expected? Today we're counting down 10 famous rappers who crossed paths with BTS and unexpectedly found themselves facing the unstoppable force known as ARMY. Some stories are dramatic, some are controversial, and some ended in ways nobody saw coming. The higher we climb on this list, the crazier the stories become. So get ready, because number 10 is already a wild start, and by the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why so many artists think twice before mentioning BTS in public. Number 10, Snoop Dogg, the joke that backfired. When people talk about rappers who unexpectedly found themselves at the center of BTS-related controversy, one name that often comes up in fan discussions is Snoop Dogg. Now, to be clear, the story wasn't built around some massive public feud or a direct attack on BTS. What made this moment explode was how a casual comment mixed with internet culture and fan interpretation suddenly turned into a global discussion. And that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. Back when BTS was rapidly expanding beyond Asia and becoming one of the biggest music acts on the planet, many veteran artists from the American hip-hop scene were still trying to understand the phenomenon. For decades, the music industry had operated according to a familiar formula. English language artists dominated international charts, while acts from other countries rarely broke through on the same level. Then BTS arrived and started rewriting the rules. Stadium tours sold out, albums topped charts, records fell one after another. Even people who didn't actively follow K-pop couldn't avoid hearing their name. During this period, countless celebrities were asked about BTS in interviews, radio shows, podcasts, and social media conversations. Some responded positively, others were confused, a few made jokes. And whenever a joke involved BTS, ARMY was always paying attention. Snoop Dogg, known for his laid-back personality and legendary sense of humor, became part of one of these conversations. What might have been intended as lighthearted entertainment quickly traveled across social media platforms at incredible speed. Screenshots circulated, short clips spread, fan accounts translated every detail. Within hours, thousands of people were debating what had actually been said and what it meant. This is where the real lesson begins. In the pre-social media era, a celebrity joke might have lived for a day before disappearing. But in the BTS era, especially when ARMY became involved, every statement could be analyzed from dozens of different angles. Some fans felt the remarks were dismissive. Others believe people were overreacting. The discussion itself became bigger than the original comment. Suddenly, entertainment websites started covering fan reactions. YouTube channels discussed the controversy. Twitter trends emerged. People who had never seen the original clip were forming opinions based solely on reactions. The situation demonstrated something many industry veterans were only beginning to realize. BTS wasn't just a successful music group. They represented a global community capable of mobilizing faster than most traditional media outlets. What made the story even more interesting was how quickly the narrative shifted. Instead of focusing solely on the joke, fans began highlighting BTS's achievements. Streaming records, sold-out concerts, chart performances, philanthropic efforts, and cultural impact flooded comment sections. In other words, what started as criticism or mockery, at least from the perspective of some fans, ended up becoming another opportunity for ARMY to promote BTS's success. This pattern would become familiar in later controversies. Every time someone questioned BTS, fans responded not only with emotion, but with receipts. Statistics appeared, historical context appeared, accomplishments appeared. The internet essentially turned into a giant fact-checking machine powered by millions of dedicated supporters. For observers outside the fandom, the event became a case study in modern celebrity culture. It wasn't necessarily about who was right or wrong, it was about influence. How much influence does a fandom possess? How quickly can a community organize? How powerful is collective attention in the digital age? The answers became increasingly obvious as the discussion continued. Eventually, like many online controversies, the storm began to fade. New headlines appeared, new debates emerged. The internet moved on, but the lesson remained. Underestimating BTS's audience could create consequences far beyond what anyone expected. A simple comment could transform into international discourse overnight. A joke could become a headline. A passing remark could generate millions of impressions across multiple platforms. Looking back, that's why this story still gets mentioned whenever people discuss celebrities and BTS. It wasn't the biggest controversy, it wasn't the harshest criticism, but it perfectly captured the moment when many artists started realizing that BTS and ARMY represented something entirely different from a traditional fan base. And for some observers, that realization was far more powerful than the original joke itself. Number 9. Azealia Banks, the social media firestorm. If there is one rapper on this list known for creating headlines with controversial opinions, unexpected arguments, and explosive social media posts, it is Azealia Banks. Throughout her career, she built a reputation for speaking her mind regardless of how people might react. Sometimes her comments generated support, other times they triggered massive backlash. But when BTS entered one of those conversations, the situation quickly escalated into something far bigger than a typical celebrity dispute. By the time this happened, BTS had already become a global force. Their albums were dominating charts, their concerts were attracting massive crowds across continents, and their online presence was unlike anything the music industry had seen before. Millions of fans followed every update, every interview, every performance, and every mention of the group. This level of attention meant that even indirect comments from celebrities could rapidly become international topics. Azealia Banks was already familiar with internet drama. In fact, many people considered her one of the most unpredictable personalities on social media. Her posts often sparked debates that lasted for days, so when comments connected to BTS began circulating online, fans immediately took notice. What followed was not a simple disagreement, it became a digital avalanche. Screenshots spread across Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, and countless fan communities. Every sentence was analyzed, every word was interpreted. Some believed the remarks were unfair, others argued they were being misunderstood, but regardless of perspective, one thing became obvious almost immediately. ARMY had entered the conversation. What makes this story especially interesting is how quickly fan communities can transform a relatively small incident into a global event. Within hours, thousands of BTS supporters were discussing the situation. Fan translators worked to provide context for international audiences. Discussion threads multiplied across multiple languages. News outlets that normally covered entertainment headlines suddenly found themselves reporting on fan reactions. The controversy was no longer about a single comment. It had evolved into a worldwide discussion involving millions of people. One of the biggest mistakes celebrities sometimes make is assuming that online criticism will disappear quickly. With ARMY, that assumption often proves incorrect. BTS fans have developed a reputation for being highly organized, highly informed, and incredibly active online. When they feel that BTS has been unfairly targeted, many immediately begin collecting evidence, sharing statistics, and presenting arguments in defense of the group. During this particular controversy, supporters flooded social media with reminders of BTS's accomplishments. Album sales, sold-out stadium tours, chart records, award wins, and charitable projects were shared repeatedly. Instead of allowing the conversation to focus entirely on criticism, fans redirected attention toward BTS's success story. The result was fascinating. People who had never followed BTS suddenly encountered countless posts detailing the group's achievements. In a strange twist, what started as negative attention ended up introducing even more people to BTS. Marketing experts often talk about visibility being one of the most valuable assets in entertainment. Ironically, controversies can sometimes create visibility that ordinary promotion could never achieve. As discussions continued, the situation became a textbook example of how modern fandom operates. Traditional celebrity influence is powerful, but massive online communities can sometimes rival or even exceed that influence. A single celebrity may have millions of followers, but BTS fans collectively represent an enormous network capable of generating trends, amplifying messages, and shaping online conversations at extraordinary speed. Observers from outside the fandom watched with amazement as the debate continued to grow. Entertainment commentators discussed the power dynamics between celebrities and fan communities. Journalists examined how fandom culture had evolved in the social media era. Some even described ARMY as one of the most influential digital communities in the world. Whether people agreed with that assessment or not, the controversy provided plenty of evidence supporting the claim. Eventually, like most internet storms, the intensity began to decrease. New topics emerged. Social media moved on to the next controversy, but the impact lingered. For many observers, this incident reinforced an important lesson. Criticizing or mocking BTS even indirectly often comes with consequences that few people anticipate. The reaction may not always be immediate, but it can be massive. Looking back today, the story remains memorable, not because it permanently damaged anyone's career, but because it highlighted the extraordinary relationship between BTS and ARMY. The group's success was never built solely on music. It was also built on a global community that felt deeply connected to them and was willing to defend them at a moment's notice. And for celebrities unfamiliar with that reality, discovering it firsthand could be a shocking experience. By the end of the controversy, one thing was impossible to ignore. The internet had once again demonstrated that when BTS becomes part of the conversation, ARMY is never far behind, and once they arrive, the entire world tends to pay attention.
Number 8. Lil Pump, the diss that turned into disaster. Few rappers embody internet-era controversy quite like Lil Pump. Rising to fame during the explosive SoundCloud rap wave, he became known for viral hits, outrageous behavior, non-stop trolling, and a personality that seemed designed to generate attention. Whether people loved him or hated him, one thing was certain. Lil Pump understood how to keep his name in headlines. But what happened when BTS fans became the focus of one of those headline-grabbing moments? That's where things started getting complicated. By the late 2010s, BTS had already shattered countless expectations. What many industry insiders once viewed as a niche Korean act had evolved into a worldwide phenomenon. Their albums were reaching #1 positions across major markets. Stadiums sold out within minutes. Their online engagement numbers were breaking records that many Western artists could only dream of achieving. Yet despite all this success, some people in the music industry still underestimated both BTS and the power of ARMY. Lil Pump became part of that conversation when comments and online interactions interpreted as disrespectful toward BTS, and their fans began circulating across social media. As often happens in internet culture, the exact details mattered less than the perception. Once enough people believed BTS was being mocked, the reaction machine started moving at full speed. Fans began sharing clips, screenshots, and posts across every major platform imaginable. Twitter exploded with discussions. Fan pages translated content into multiple languages. YouTube creators started producing breakdown videos. Before long, what might have been a relatively small moment transformed into a full-scale online controversy. One reason the backlash grew so rapidly was because BTS fans had already witnessed similar situations before. They had seen celebrities underestimate the group's influence. They had seen dismissive comments from critics. They had seen jokes that portrayed BTS as less deserving than Western artists. Over time, many ARMY members developed a strong instinct for responding whenever they felt BTS was being unfairly targeted. In their eyes, defending BTS wasn't simply about protecting a favorite music group. It was about challenging stereotypes, confronting misinformation, and standing up for artists they believed had earned global respect through years of hard work. As criticism toward Lil Pump intensified, something interesting happened. Instead of merely arguing with his comments, fans started comparing achievements. Suddenly, timelines were filled with statistics. BTS's streaming numbers appeared everywhere. Concert attendance records surfaced. Award wins were highlighted. Billboard accomplishments were reposted repeatedly. International milestones flooded discussion threads. The conversation slowly shifted away from whatever sparked the controversy and toward a larger comparison of influence, success, and cultural impact. This was a pattern ARMY had perfected over the years. Rather than relying exclusively on emotional responses, many fans preferred using measurable accomplishments. They presented evidence. They shared data. They built arguments around facts and achievements. To outside observers, it sometimes felt less like a fandom debate and more like a marketing campaign operating at global scale. The sheer organization surprised people who weren't familiar with BTS culture. Meanwhile, mainstream media began paying attention. Entertainment websites noticed trending hashtags. Articles appeared discussing the growing conflict. Social media analytics accounts tracked engagement numbers. Some reports even pointed out that the backlash itself was generating more attention than the original comments. In a strange twist, the controversy was becoming a story about fan power rather than celebrity criticism. For Lil Pump, this represented one of the realities of modern fame. In previous decades, artists could make provocative statements and move on relatively quickly. Today, every comment exists within an interconnected digital ecosystem. Fans archive everything. Communities mobilize instantly. Discussions can cross continents within minutes. What begins as a joke in one country may become a headline in dozens of others before the day ends. The BTS fanbase operates especially effectively within this environment because of its global structure. Fans from North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East all contribute to conversation simultaneously. This creates momentum that is difficult for any individual celebrity to match. During the height of the controversy, many observers realized they weren't simply watching a disagreement between a rapper and a fan base. They were witnessing a demonstration of collective influence on an enormous scale. As weeks passed, the online storm gradually cooled. Like most internet conflicts, attention eventually shifted elsewhere. New trends emerged. New controversies replaced old ones. Yet the incident remained memorable because it illustrated a recurring lesson that many public figures continued learning throughout BTS's rise. Mocking BTS or even appearing to mock BTS could trigger reactions far beyond expectations. The group's supporters were passionate, organized, and remarkably persistent. Most importantly, they viewed attacks on BTS as opportunities to amplify the group's accomplishments even further. Looking back, that's what makes this story so fascinating. The original criticism became almost secondary. What people remember today is the response, the flood of fan activity, the overwhelming wave of statistics, the trending hashtags, the global discussions, and the realization that in the modern entertainment world, provoking ARMY often creates consequences that are much larger than the initial comment itself. For many celebrities, that realization arrives too late. For Lil Pump, it became another unforgettable chapter in the unpredictable intersection between rap culture, internet culture, and one of the most powerful fandoms ever created. Number 7. Waka Flocka Flame, the unexpected backlash. Sometimes controversy doesn't begin with an insult. Sometimes it doesn't even start with a diss track, a harsh interview, or a direct attack. Sometimes all it takes is a few comments, a misunderstood opinion, and a fan base large enough to turn a simple conversation into international news. That's exactly why Waka Flocka Flame's name became linked to one of the most talked about BTS fan controversies of its time. Unlike some rappers on this list, Waka Flocka Flame wasn't known for constantly targeting BTS. In fact, many people were surprised when his name suddenly started appearing across BTS fan communities. Yet the moment demonstrates something important about modern celebrity culture. When you're dealing with one of the biggest fan bases in the world, even small interactions can create enormous reactions. By this point, BTS had already become impossible to ignore. Their influence extended far beyond music charts. Brands wanted partnerships, television networks wanted appearances, award shows wanted performances. Every major entertainment publications seemed to be covering their rise. At the same time, ARMY had developed a reputation unlike any fandom before it. They weren't simply consumers of content. They were translators, organizers, researchers, promoters, and defenders, all operating across multiple platforms at once. This meant that whenever BTS became part of a conversation, millions of eyes immediately turned toward it. The controversy connected to Waka Flocka Flame emerged during a period when discussions about BTS were appearing everywhere online. As comments associated with him began spreading across social media, fan accounts quickly picked them up. Within hours, screenshots were circulating internationally. People translated statements into different languages. Threads appeared analyzing every possible interpretation. Some fans believed the remarks were disrespectful. Others argued that context was missing. But once debate begins on the internet, especially involving BTS, things rarely remain small for long. What happened next followed a pattern that had become increasingly familiar. ARMY mobilized. Supporters flooded social media platforms with responses. Hashtags began climbing trending lists. Discussion videos appeared on YouTube. Fan editors created compilations highlighting BTS's accomplishments. Even individuals who had no prior knowledge of the situation suddenly found themselves seeing BTS-related content everywhere they looked online. One of the most remarkable aspects of these moments is how quickly fan communities can coordinate without centralized leadership. Millions of people across different countries somehow move in the same direction at nearly the same time. It's a phenomenon that has fascinated journalists, marketers, and researchers for years. During this controversy, that collective energy became impossible to ignore. Rather than focusing exclusively on criticizing Waka Flocka Flame, many fans chose a different strategy. They highlighted BTS's journey. They reminded people how the group started from a relatively small company and fought their way into global superstardom. They shared stories about years of struggle, industry skepticism, financial uncertainty, and relentless hard work. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't only about a celebrity comment anymore. It became a reminder of why fans cared so deeply about BTS in the first place. The emotional connection played a huge role. Many ARMY members felt personally invested in the group's success because they had watched BTS overcome obstacle after obstacle. They remembered the years when Western media largely ignored them. They remembered when critics claimed a Korean group could never dominate international markets. They remembered every prediction that BTS would eventually fade away. Seeing the group prove those predictions wrong created a sense of loyalty that few artists ever experience. As a result, comments perceived as dismissive often triggered stronger reactions than outsiders expected. Entertainment media soon noticed the growing discussion. Articles appeared examining fan responses. Social media analysts tracked engagement levels. Some commentators argued that the reaction was excessive. Others suggested it demonstrated the extraordinary bond between BTS and their supporters. Regardless of opinion, nobody could deny the scale of attention the situation generated. What makes this story especially fascinating is that it highlighted a reality many celebrities were still learning. In the digital age, influence isn't measured only by fame, it's measured by community. BTS possessed one of the largest and most active communities on Earth. That meant any public discussion involving the group carried far greater weight than people anticipated. A passing remark could become a trending topic. A casual opinion could spark international debate. A minor misunderstanding could generate millions of interactions within a single day. As the controversy continued, many observers realized they were witnessing something bigger than a disagreement between a rapper and a fan base. They were seeing a demonstration of modern fandom power at its peak. The internet had created a world where communities could respond collectively and almost instantly. BTS happened to have one of the most effective communities ever assembled. Eventually, the intensity faded as attention shifted elsewhere. That's the nature of online culture. New stories replace old ones at incredible speed. Yet the incident remained memorable because it reinforced an increasingly obvious lesson. Underestimating ARMY was a mistake many public figures continued making, and the results were often the same. Massive engagement, global discussion, endless headlines. Looking back today, the controversy serves as another example of how BTS transformed not only music but fan culture itself. The story wasn't really about Waka Flocka Flame in the end. It was about what happened when a celebrity unexpectedly encountered the collective force of millions of dedicated supporters. And as many artists would eventually discover, once ARMY decides to respond, the entire internet tends to listen. Number 6. Rich Brian, the comment that sparked chaos. Among all the names on this list, Rich Brian might be one of the most surprising. Unlike many rappers who built their careers around controversy, shock value, or public feuds, Rich Brian earned respect through a completely different path. Rising from internet fame into a legitimate hip-hop artist, the Indonesian rapper became known for his humor, self-awareness, and steady artistic growth. That's exactly why so many people were caught off guard when his name suddenly became part of a BTS-related controversy that spread across social media like wildfire. At the time, BTS was experiencing one of the most explosive periods of growth in modern music history. Their fanbase was expanding at a staggering pace. Every award show appearance generated headlines. Every music release dominated online discussion. Every interview was analyzed by fans around the world. BTS had reached a level where even casual mentions of their name could generate millions of interactions online. For celebrities, this created an unusual challenge. Saying something positive could bring praise from fans. Saying something negative or even something that could be interpreted negatively, might unleash a completely different reaction. The situation involving Rich Brian began when comments connected to him started circulating across fan communities. As happens so often in internet culture, context became a major point of debate. Some people argued the comments were harmless. Others felt they contained subtle disrespect toward BTS. Different translations appeared. Different interpretations emerged. Within hours, fans across multiple countries were discussing the issue simultaneously. What made the situation particularly interesting was how quickly it escalated. One moment, the discussion was limited to a few posts. The next, thousands of accounts were sharing screenshots, clips, and explanations. Fan translators worked around the clock to ensure international audiences could understand every detail. Hashtags began appearing. Discussion threads multiplied. YouTube creators started posting reaction videos. Entertainment accounts joined the conversation. Suddenly, a relatively small moment had transformed into a global online event. For people unfamiliar with BTS fandom culture, the scale of the reaction often seems difficult to understand. But longtime observers recognized a familiar pattern. ARMY had spent years defending BTS against criticism, stereotypes, and industry skepticism. During the group's early years, many media outlets underestimated them. Some critics dismissed them because they sang primarily in Korean. Others questioned whether a Korean group could truly succeed in Western markets. Fans remembered all of it. Every obstacle, every insult, every prediction of failure. Because of that history, many supporters developed a strong instinct to respond whenever they believed BTS was being treated unfairly. To outsiders, the reaction sometimes appeared intense. To fans, however, they felt justified. They saw themselves as protecting artists who had earned respect through relentless effort and perseverance. As criticism toward Rich Brian intensified, another familiar phenomenon emerged. Fans began flooding timelines with BTS achievements. Album sales appeared everywhere. Chart records surfaced repeatedly. Streaming milestones spread across social media. Concert attendance numbers circulated. Awards and historic accomplishments were reposted thousands of times. The strategy was simple but incredibly effective. Instead of focusing entirely on the controversy, fans redirected attention toward BTS's success story. This approach often creates an unexpected outcome. People who initially encounter a controversy out of curiosity end up learning about BTS's accomplishments. In other words, attempts to criticize or mock the group frequently result in additional exposure. Marketing professionals have even pointed to ARMY as one of the most effective organic promotional forces in modern entertainment. Their ability to dominate conversations and redirect narratives is almost unmatched. Meanwhile, the broader internet watched the situation unfold. Journalists began writing articles about fan reactions. Social media analysts tracked engagement levels. Commentators debated whether fandom influence had become too powerful. Others argued that fan communities simply represented a new form of collective cultural participation. Regardless of perspective, one thing remained undeniable. ARMY had once again proven its ability to shape online discourse. For Rich Brian, the controversy became a lesson in the realities of modern celebrity culture. The entertainment landscape had changed dramatically. In previous decades, public figures could make comments that disappeared after a few news cycles. Today, every statement can be archived, translated, shared, and analyzed within minutes. Global fan communities ensure that no remark remains isolated for long. What makes this story particularly memorable is the contrast between expectations and reality. Many people viewed Rich Brian as relatively uncontroversial compared to other rappers. Yet even he discovered how quickly online discussions can spiral when BTS becomes involved. It wasn't necessarily the severity of the original comments that fueled the controversy. It was the scale of the response. Millions of people discussing the same topic simultaneously create momentum that few individuals can stop. As days passed, the online storm gradually lost intensity. New trends emerged. New headlines captured public attention. Social media moved on, as it always does. But the incident remained part of a larger pattern that had become impossible to ignore. Time after time, celebrities underestimated the reach, organization, and dedication of BTS fans. Time after time, they discovered that what seemed like a small comment could evolve into an international conversation overnight. Looking back, the controversy wasn't ultimately about winning or losing an argument. It was about influence. It demonstrated how a fandom could rival major media organizations in speed, reach, and visibility. It showed how connected modern fan communities had become. And perhaps most importantly, it reinforced a lesson that many public figures continued learning throughout BTS's rise to global dominance. When ARMY believes BTS has been disrespected, silence is rarely the outcome. More often, the result is a tidal wave of attention powerful enough to turn a single comment into worldwide news.
Number 5. Tyler, the Creator, the remark that wouldn't disappear. When people think of Tyler, the Creator, they usually think of creativity, unpredictability, and a personality that refuses to follow industry rules. Throughout his career, he built a reputation for saying exactly what he thinks, often without worrying about how the internet might react. Sometimes those comments are praised for their honesty. Other times they create controversy. And when BTS fans believed one of those moments involved their favorite group, what followed became another unforgettable chapter in the growing story of celebrities, discovering just how powerful ARMY can be. By the time this situation gained attention online, BTS had already reached a level of global fame that few artists in history ever achieve. They weren't simply popular musicians anymore. They had become a cultural phenomenon. Their music was crossing language barriers. Their influence extended into fashion, philanthropy, entertainment, and even international diplomacy. Millions of people followed their activities daily. Every appearance generated headlines. Every achievement sparked celebration across social media. At the same time, Tyler, the Creator, occupied a very different position within the music world. He was respected for artistic originality and his willingness to challenge expectations. His fanbase admired his authenticity and unique perspective. Because of this, many people paid close attention whenever he shared opinions about music, fame, or industry trends. A single comment from him could quickly become a topic of discussion. The controversy emerged when remarks associated with Tyler began spreading through BTS fan communities. As always, the internet complicated everything. Some people interpreted the comments as harmless observations. Others viewed them as dismissive toward BTS and their success. The more people debated the meaning, the faster the discussion spread. Within hours, screenshots appeared across Twitter. Fan pages reposted clips. Translation accounts worked to ensure international audiences understood the context. Before long, a conversation that may have started among a relatively small group of people had become a global debate. This is where the true power of modern fandom revealed itself once again. One of the reasons ARMY has become so influential is because the community operates across nearly every major social platform simultaneously. Fans in South Korea, the United States, Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, the Philippines, India, France, and countless other countries all participate in the same conversations. When a topic begins trending, millions of users can contribute at almost the same moment. The result is an enormous wave of engagement that often overwhelms ordinary online discussions. As fan reactions intensified, something familiar happened. Instead of focusing exclusively on criticism, many supporters redirected attention toward BTS's accomplishments. Timelines filled with achievements. Fans shared stories about the group's journey from a small company to global superstardom. They posted chart records, sold-out stadium tour, historic award wins, and major milestones. The narrative slowly shifted away from the original comments and toward a larger conversation about why BTS had earned such loyalty in the first place. For many ARMY members, BTS represented much more than entertainment. Fans often spoke about finding comfort in the group's music during difficult periods of their lives. Others described how BTS inspired them to pursue goals, improve their confidence, or overcome personal challenges. Because of that emotional connection, criticism aimed at the group frequently felt personal. Outsiders sometimes underestimated this aspect of fandom culture, focusing only on numbers and statistics while ignoring the human relationships that existed behind them. As discussions continued, entertainment media began taking notice. Articles appeared analyzing fan reactions. Social media commentators discussed the growing influence of fandom communities. Marketing experts examined how BTS supporters consistently managed to dominate online conversations. Some observers even argued that ARMY had become one of the most powerful grassroots communities in the world. Whether people agreed with that assessment or not, the evidence was difficult to ignore. The fascinating part was how the controversy evolved beyond the original remarks. At a certain point, The debate stopped being about what Tyler supposedly said and became about what BTS represented. Supporters emphasized how the group had broken barriers for Asian artists in global markets. They highlighted the years of skepticism BTS faced before reaching international success. They reminded people that countless industry experts once claimed a Korean language act could never achieve mainstream dominance worldwide. Those reminders resonated strongly because they reflected real struggles BTS encountered during their rise. Fans felt they had witnessed history unfolding in real time. They remembered the obstacles. They remembered the doubts. They remembered every headline predicting limitations that BTS would later shatter. As a result, defending the group often felt like defending a larger story about perseverance and determination. Meanwhile, the internet continued doing what it does best, amplifying everything. Reaction videos multiplied, opinion threads expanded, podcasts discussed the situation, news accounts reported on trending hashtags. Millions of people who had never seen the original comments suddenly found themselves reading about BTS, Tyler, and ARMY. Ironically, this created another recurring pattern. The controversy generated more visibility for BTS than the original discussion ever could have on its own. New audiences discovered the group. Curious observers explored their music. Casual readers learned about achievements they previously knew nothing about. Once again, a situation that started as criticism ended up increasing attention around BTS rather than diminishing it. As weeks passed, the intensity gradually faded. Social media moved on to newer stories. Different controversies captured public attention. Yet the incident remained memorable because it reinforced a lesson that kept appearing throughout BTS's rise to global prominence. Many celebrities underestimated the scale of ARMY. They saw a fan base. What they failed to recognize was a worldwide network capable of mobilizing millions of people within hours. Looking back today, the story serves as another example of how dramatically the relationship between artists and fans has changed in the digital era. Influence no longer flows in only one direction. Communities have power too. They can shape narratives, amplify messages, and dominate conversations on a global scale. And whenever BTS enters that equation, the impact becomes even larger. For Tyler, the creator, the episode became one more reminder that in the age of social media, words travel farther than ever before. For ARMY, it became another chapter in a long history of defending the artists they admire. And for everyone watching from the sidelines, it offered a fascinating glimpse into what happens when one of music's most passionate fandoms decides to make its voice heard.
Number 4. B.O.B., the criticism that ignited a global response. Long before this controversy ever happened, B.O.B. had already established himself as a recognizable figure in hip-hop. He scored major hits, collaborated with huge artists, and built a reputation as someone unafraid to express unconventional opinions. Throughout his career, speaking his mind became part of his public image. But what many people didn't expect was that comments connected to BTS would eventually place him directly in the path of one of the most powerful fan movements in modern entertainment. By the time this story unfolded, BTS was no longer simply a successful K-pop group. They had become a worldwide phenomenon operating on a scale few artists could match. Their albums dominated charts across continents. Their music videos generated hundreds of millions of views. Stadium tours sold out with incredible speed. More importantly, they had built a fan base unlike anything the industry had seen before. ARMY wasn't just large. It was organized, global, passionate, and astonishingly fast when responding to controversy. The situation began when comments attributed to B.O.B. started attracting attention within BTS fan circles. At first, the discussion remained relatively small. A few accounts shared screenshots, others reposted clips and interpretation, but as often happens online, the conversation quickly expanded beyond its original audience. Fans began debating the meaning behind the remarks. Some viewed them as criticism, others saw them as disrespect toward BTS's achievements. The more people discussed the issue, the faster it spread. Within a matter of hours, fan communities across multiple countries were talking about the same topic simultaneously. Translation accounts published explanations in various languages. Discussion forums exploded with activity. Social media platforms filled with reactions. The controversy gained momentum so rapidly that many casual observers had trouble identifying where it even started. That's one of the defining characteristics of BTS-related controversies. Once ARMY becomes engaged, events move at extraordinary speed. What makes this particular story fascinating is how quickly supporters transformed defense into promotion. Rather than spending all their energy attacking criticism, fans focused on highlighting BTS's accomplishments. Charts appeared everywhere, album sales statistics circulated widely, historic achievements resurfaced. Fans reminded the internet about sold-out world tours, groundbreaking awards, and records that had fundamentally changed perceptions of what international artists could accomplish. For ARMY, this strategy had become almost second nature. Over the years, fans learned that presenting evidence often proved more effective than simply arguing. Whenever someone questioned BTS's success, supporters responded with facts. Whenever someone minimized the group's impact, fans highlighted measurable accomplishments. This approach created a unique dynamic where criticism frequently resulted in greater public awareness of BTS's achievements. As the controversy intensified, observers from outside the fandom began paying attention. Entertainment websites published articles examining the reaction, journalists covered trending hashtags, analysts tracked engagement levels across platforms. What started as a disagreement involving a rapper had evolved into a broader discussion about fan influence in the digital age. Many commentators were particularly fascinated by ARMY's organizational abilities. Unlike traditional fan clubs of previous decades, BTS supporters operated as a decentralized network spanning nearly every corner of the globe. Fans in Asia, Europe, North America, South America, Africa, and the Middle East could coordinate messaging within minutes. Trends emerged rapidly, information traveled instantly, collective action happened almost organically. For celebrities unfamiliar with this reality, the experience could be overwhelming. B.O.B.'s situation became another example of how dramatically entertainment culture had changed. In earlier eras, public figures largely controlled narratives through interviews, television appearances, and media relationships. Social media altered that balance. Fans now possess platforms of their own. They could amplify stories, challenge narratives, and influence public perception on a massive scale. As discussions continued, many ARMY members emphasized something deeper than statistics or chart positions. They spoke about BTS's journey. They recalled the years when the group struggled for recognition. They remembered how industry gatekeepers frequently underestimated them. They remembered accusations that BTS would never break into Western markets. They remembered predictions that their popularity would eventually disappear. Number 3. Cardi B. The moment the internet exploded. By the time Cardi B became one of the biggest names in hip-hop, she had already built a reputation for something few celebrities could match: her ability to dominate conversation. Whether it was a new song, a viral interview, a social media post, or an unexpected opinion, people paid attention. Cardi understood the internet better than most artists, and she knew exactly how quickly online discussions could spiral into worldwide headlines. But even with all that experience, one thing remained unpredictable: the reaction of BTS fans when they believed their favorite group had been disrespected. At this point in BTS's journey, their influence had reached extraordinary levels. They weren't simply chart-topping artists anymore. They had become a cultural movement. Every comeback generated massive anticipation. Every achievement became international news. Millions of fans followed every update with incredible dedication. More importantly, ARMY had developed a reputation that even major entertainment companies respected. They were fast, organized, passionate, and capable of turning almost any topic involving BTS into a global discussion. The situation involving Cardi B became memorable because it demonstrated exactly how powerful that collective attention could be. As comments, opinions, and online interactions connected to Cardi started circulating among fan communities, the discussion spread at astonishing speed. Some fans believed certain remarks were dismissive. Others argued people were taking things out of context. Social media immediately split into multiple camps. Supporters defended Cardi, BTS fans defended the group. Neutral observers tried to understand what had actually happened. Meanwhile, screenshots, clips, translations, and reactions multiplied every minute. This is where the internet entered full chaos mode. What might have remained a relatively small celebrity discussion suddenly became impossible to ignore. Fan pages began posting detailed explanations. Large BTS accounts shared timelines of events. Trending hashtags appeared. Discussion videos flooded YouTube. Entertainment pages started reporting on the growing reactions. Within a very short period of time, millions of people were talking about the same controversy simultaneously. One reason the situation escalated so rapidly was because BTS fans had become extremely sensitive to perceived disrespect over the years. To understand why, you have to understand BTS's history. Long before they were filling stadiums around the world, BTS faced enormous skepticism. Critics questioned their potential. Industry insiders doubted their longevity. Some people argued they could never compete internationally because they primarily performed in Korean. Others believed language barriers would permanently limit their success. Fans remembered every one of those moments. Then BTS shattered those expectations. They broke records, they topped charts, they sold out stadiums, they achieved milestones that many established Western artists never reached. For ARMY, these accomplishments weren't just statistics, they represented years of perseverance. They represented proof that hard work could overcome barriers. That's why criticism directed toward BTS often triggered such strong emotional reactions. As the Cardi-related controversy grew, fans once again turned to a familiar strategy. Instead of focusing solely on arguments, they flooded social media with evidence of BTS's impact. Achievement threads appeared everywhere, historic milestones were reposted, international accomplishments were highlighted. Fans shared stories about BTS's influence on music, culture, and even personal lives. The conversation gradually shifted away from the original issue and toward a broader discussion about why BTS had earned such loyalty from millions of people around the world. For outside observers, the scale of the response was astonishing. Marketing analysts often talk about audience engagement, but ARMY seemed to operate on a completely different level. Every major platform reflected their presence. Twitter trends moved rapidly, videos accumulated views, posts generated enormous interaction. Even people who didn't follow either Cardi B or BTS found themselves encountering the controversy simply because it was everywhere. This phenomenon revealed something important about modern celebrity culture. Fame alone is powerful, but community can be even more powerful. Cardi B possessed one of the largest personal platforms in entertainment. BTS possessed something different, a massive global network of supporters acting collectively. When those two forces collided inside the attention economy of social media, the result was inevitable, an explosion of engagement that spread far beyond the original discussion. Journalists soon entered the conversation. Entertainment websites published articles, opinion writers analyzed fan behavior. Social media commentators debated whether modern fandom had become too influential. Some criticized the intensity of reactions. Others admired the dedication and organization displayed by BTS supporters. Regardless of perspective, everyone agreed on one thing. ARMY had once again demonstrated its extraordinary ability to dominate online discourse. What made the situation especially fascinating was how it continued growing even after the original controversy began fading. Reaction videos led to more reaction videos. News articles inspired further discussions. Commentary channels produced breakdowns. Entire communities analyzed every detail. The event developed a life of its own. And that's often what happens when BTS becomes involved. The discussion stops being about a single comment and starts becoming a larger conversation about influence, fandom, and cultural power. For many fans, defending BTS wasn't merely about protecting celebrities, it was about defending a story they deeply believed in. They saw 7 artists who overcame obstacles that seemed impossible. They saw a group that challenged industry expectations and changed perceptions around the world. Criticism therefore felt like a challenge to that story itself. As weeks passed, the controversy eventually cooled. New headlines appeared. Social media moved on. The internet found new topics to obsess over. Yet the incident remained memorable because it reinforced a lesson that countless public figures had already learned. When BTS fans believe their group has been mocked, underestimated, or dismissed, they rarely stay silent. Instead, they respond with numbers, achievements, history, passion, and an online presence powerful enough to reshape the entire conversation. Looking back today, the story involving Cardi B stands as another example of how entertainment has changed forever. In the digital age, audiences aren't passive spectators, they're participants. They're organizers, they're amplifiers. And when millions of those participants unite behind a single cause, the results can be overwhelming. For Cardi B, it became another chapter in the unpredictable world of internet fame. For ARMY, it became another opportunity to demonstrate their loyalty. And for everyone watching from the sidelines, it offered yet another reminder that challenging BTS, whether intentionally or not, can unleash a reaction far bigger than anyone expects. Number 2. Nicki Minaj. The backlash nobody expected. When you talk about modern rap royalty, it's almost impossible not to mention Nicki Minaj. For more than a decade, she dominated charts, influenced an entire generation of artists, and built one of the most loyal fan communities in music. Her fan base, known as the Barbs, became famous for their passion, organization, and willingness to defend their favorite artist at any moment. On paper, it seemed like Nicki understood fandom culture better than almost anyone. Yet, even in an era where fan armies ruled social media, there was one force that repeatedly surprised celebrities across the industry: BTS Army. What made this story so fascinating wasn't simply the names involved, it was the collision of two of the most powerful fan communities on the internet. By the time the controversy emerged, BTS had already rewritten countless records. Their rise from underdogs to global superstars had become one of the most remarkable success stories in entertainment history. Every comeback felt like an international event. Every award show appearance generated headlines. Every chart achievement sparked celebrations across multiple continents. Millions of fans followed their journey with incredible dedication. At the same time, Nicki Minaj remained one of the most influential rappers on the planet. Her reach was enormous. Her fan base was massive. Her cultural impact was undeniable. That's why few people expected discussions involving her and BTS to become as explosive as they eventually did. Like many internet controversies, the situation began with comments, reactions, interpretations, and online conversations that spread much faster than anyone anticipated. Fans immediately started analyzing every detail. Screenshots circulated, clips were reposted. Translation accounts provided context for international audiences. Within hours, discussions that might have remained isolated exploded across social media platforms. The internet loves conflict, but fandoms amplify it. Once BTS fans became deeply involved, engagement numbers surged. Hashtags appeared. Fan accounts created detailed threads explaining timelines and context. Large communities on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Reddit joined the conversation. Millions of people suddenly found themselves discussing the same topic at the same time. What happened next revealed one of the most fascinating aspects of ARMY culture. Instead of relying entirely on emotional reactions, many fans responded with information. They shared BTS's achievements. They highlighted records the group had broken. They posted statistics, sales numbers, streaming milestones, sold-out tours, and historic accomplishments. The narrative quickly shifted. Rather than focusing solely on controversy, supporters redirected attention toward BTS's global impact. This strategy had become almost legendary among longtime observers. Every time BTS faced criticism, fans seemed ready with an encyclopedia of accomplishments. Every debate became an opportunity to educate people about the group's journey. Every controversy transformed into free publicity. It was a pattern that entertainment analysts noticed repeatedly throughout BTS's rise. Meanwhile, media outlets began covering the growing discussion. Articles appeared examining fan reactions. Commentators debated whether fandom influence had become too powerful. Social media experts pointed to the situation as another example of how modern audiences could shape narratives independently of traditional media organizations. Years earlier, major television networks and magazines controlled most entertainment conversations. Now, millions of fans could generate equal or sometimes greater attention on their own. For many observers, that was the real story. The controversy wasn't simply about Nicki Minaj or BTS. It was about influence. Who controls the conversation in the age of social media? Is it the celebrity with millions of followers? Or is it the community of supporters capable of mobilizing instantly across dozens of countries? As discussions continued, the answer seemed increasingly complicated. ARMY demonstrated once again that they were far more than a conventional fan base. They functioned almost like a global network. Information moved rapidly. Trends spread internationally. Supporters coordinated messaging without any formal leadership structure. Researchers, journalists, and marketing professionals frequently cited BTS fans as one of the most organized online communities in existence, and situations like this helped explain why. Another factor fueling reactions was BTS's history. Fans often felt protective because they remembered how frequently the group had been underestimated. They remembered industry figures questioning whether a Korean act could succeed globally. They remembered headlines suggesting language barriers would prevent mainstream recognition. They remembered every obstacle BTS overcame on the path to worldwide fame. That collective memory remained powerful. To many supporters, defending BTS wasn't simply about responding to criticism. It was about protecting a story of perseverance, resilience, and achievement. Every challenge BTS overcame strengthened the bond between the group and their audience. Over time, that bond became one of the strongest artist-fan relationships in modern music. As days turned into weeks, the controversy gradually began losing momentum. New topics emerged. New headlines dominated social media feeds. the internet moved on, as it always does. Yet the incident remained memorable because it reinforced a lesson that countless celebrities had already learned. No matter how famous, successful, or influential someone might be, underestimating ARMY could be a serious mistake. The scale of the response often exceeded expectations. The speed of the reaction often shocked observers, and the persistence of BTS fans frequently transformed small controversies into international discussions. Looking back, the story involving Nicki Minaj became another example of how dramatically entertainment culture has changed in the digital era. Fans are no longer passive audiences watching from the sidelines. They are active participants shaping narratives in real time. They influence trends, amplify messages, and determine which stories dominate public attention. And when millions of those fans unite behind BTS, the impact can be enormous. Which brings us to the final spot on this countdown. The rapper who discovered this reality in the most dramatic way of all. And compared to everything you've heard so far, number 1 takes the story to an entirely different level. Number 1, Kanye West, the comparison that shook the internet. If there is one artist whose name alone can instantly create headlines anywhere in the world, it is Kanye West. Throughout his career, he became famous not only for his music, but also for his ability to dominate public conversations. Whether people agreed with him or disagreed with him, the result was usually the same. Everyone paid attention. And when discussions involving Kanye and BTS began colliding online, the internet witnessed one of the most fascinating examples of modern fandom power ever seen. Unlike many stories people remember years later, this wasn't simply about one comment, one interview, or one isolated moment. What made the situation so massive was the endless stream of comparisons that appeared across social media. Fans of different artists constantly debated influence, chart success, cultural impact, innovation, and legacy. Every time BTS achieved a new milestone, comparisons inevitably appeared. Every time Kanye made headlines, comparisons appeared again. Eventually, the conversations grew so large that they became stories themselves. By this stage, BTS had reached a level of popularity that seemed almost unreal. Their albums were breaking records globally. Their tours filled stadiums across continents. Their influence extended far beyond music into culture, fashion, philanthropy, and media. Millions of supporters followed every achievement closely. For ARMY, BTS represented one of the greatest underdog success stories in modern entertainment. Meanwhile, Kanye West represented something different. He was already viewed as one of the most influential figures in hip-hop history. His impact on production, creativity, and modern rap culture was undeniable. He had spent years shaping trends that influenced entire generations of artists. Because of that legacy, discussions comparing BTS and Kanye often became emotional very quickly. At first, these debates looked like ordinary internet arguments. Then, the numbers exploded. Millions of posts appeared across platforms. Videos analyzing comparisons accumulated huge audiences. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Threads discussing influence, achievements, and cultural significance spread across multiple countries simultaneously. Some people argued that comparing them made no sense because they represented different genres and different eras. Others insisted that the conversation was inevitable because both had become global cultural forces. What made the situation unique was how ARMY responded. Instead of avoiding comparisons, many fans embraced them as opportunities to highlight BTS's accomplishments. Timelines became filled with historic milestones. Fans posted sales records, streaming numbers, sold-out stadium statistics, award wins, and global achievements. Detailed threads documented BTS's journey from a small South Korean company to worldwide superstardom. For many supporters, the goal wasn't simply to win an argument. It was to show why BTS deserved a place in conversations involving the biggest names in music history. The response was enormous. Entertainment websites began covering fan debates. Social media analysts tracked engagement levels. Commentators discussed the growing influence of fandom communities. Marketing experts pointed to ARMY as one of the most effective examples of digital organization ever seen. What started as comparisons between artists evolved into something much bigger, a demonstration of collective online power. This is where many observers realized they were witnessing a major shift in entertainment culture. In previous decades, narratives were largely controlled by record labels, television networks, magazines, and radio stations. The audience consumed content. Today, audiences help create the narrative themselves. Fans decide what trends. Fans decide what dominates discussion. Fans determine which topics remain visible. and few fandoms demonstrated that reality more effectively than ARMY. Every time BTS became part of a major debate, supporters mobilized with astonishing speed. Information spread globally within minutes, fan translators worked across languages, communities coordinated messaging naturally. The scale resembled a worldwide media network operating 24 hours a day. For people watching from the outside, it was almost unbelievable. One moment, a discussion would appear in a small corner of the internet. A few hours later, it would be trending internationally. The attention generated by these debates often exceeded the reach of traditional entertainment news itself. Ironically, many of these conversations ended up benefiting BTS. People who had never listened to their music became curious. Casual observers started researching their achievements. New audiences discovered their story. What began as arguments frequently transformed into exposure, and exposure often became interest. That pattern repeated again and again. The bigger the debate became, the more attention BTS received. The more attention BTS received, the larger ARMY grew. The larger ARMY grew, the stronger their influence became. It was a cycle that few artists in history have ever experienced on such a global scale. Looking back today, that's why this story earns the #1 spot. Not because of one single controversy. Not because of one dramatic argument. Not because of one celebrity comment, but because it represented the ultimate lesson that countless public figures eventually learned during BTS's rise to global dominance. The real force wasn't just BTS. The real force was BTS and ARMY together. Millions of people connected by music, loyalty, and a shared belief in a group they had watched overcome impossible odds. Again and again, celebrities discovered that challenging, questioning, or underestimating that force often created consequences far beyond expectations. And that's what makes this entire countdown so fascinating. The stories were never only about rappers. They were about the unprecedented power of a global fandom that transformed itself into one of the most influential communities the entertainment world has ever seen. A community capable of turning a single comment into a worldwide discussion. A community capable of dominating headlines overnight. And a community that proved, time after time, that underestimating ARMY was usually the biggest mistake of all.